Hi, this is Solomon Burke, and I'm riding the blues train on Radio Free Georgia. Soul sounds, rhythm and blues, everything you want to know about the news. It's on the Soul Train tonight.
This is the world of Dr. Dolittle, the wonderful world of Dr. Dolittle, where crocodiles talk and elephants sing, and animals do most any old thing, where polar bears wear top hats and leopards with
a little bit of fun there, just to thank my friend in the new car business, Eric Robinson, over there at Carriage Kia in Woodstock. Yes, we did a little shopping during Thanksgiving, and all went swimmingly for the second time. So if anyone's looking, highly recommend it. And just be aware that carriage, cage, they sound kind of similar. So you're going to meet some of the other animals that hide out over at Carriage Kia. There's this ghost penguin called Kenny. I've not seen him, but other people say he just wanders around the building, glides across the floor quietly. But maybe you have to be an employee to see him. One of which is the polar bear, Mr. Mark. Now, he's bipolar bear, but that's okay. Long as you feed him at certain times of day, it's all right. But Dr. Dolittle, Mr. Eric, will take care of you. Things that you need when you go out car shopping. I mean, you can search around all the dealers, but at the end of the day, I got a very good trade at a very good price. They've got good stock, and they're all rather nice. So there you go.
Well, that's life in the world of Dr. Dolittle. Doves start to coo when they see Dolittle. He has a profound...
Happy holidays from WRFG Atlanta. This is Good Morning Blues, and UK Bob is broadcasting Christmas love. He dyed mistletoe all around the microphone.
So now let's spin over to France and rock on with the interview mentioned at the beginning of the show with Jim McCarty, the drummer from the Yardbirds, who also, in subsequent parts of his life, merged into other acts, written books. Way too much in his bio. Go online, you'll read pages and pages of what he has created right there. But let me just point out that the book we're talking about is titled She Walks in Beauty, My Quest for the Bigger Picture. Came out a few months ago, and what's different, I would guess, is as opposed to his last book, which would be, 3 years ago, called Nobody Told Me. That was a musical career about, his musical life. This, on the other hand, is something that reflects on his musical life, but makes the connections between the things that he has believed about all this time, that you can communicate with people beyond. And you might think that's extreme, but read the book and you'll see that it's not. And that reflection upon all the things that he's done, the places he's been, his relationship with Keith, all of those things were predicated by the fact he always felt that there was something happening, something going on that maybe he couldn't explain. Some of you already know that. Some of you are thinking, Bob, this is nuts. No, it isn't, unless you want it to be. But anyway, it's channeled through experience, not just through the loss of his wife. These are things that he encountered in the last 60-odd years. So recounting his life's events, but pointing out moments of interconnection, maybe musical baptisms that could engage everybody. I'll leave it with you.
Well, it's another edition of Good Morning Blues on a Thursday. Today you are going to have a very intriguing conversation, and not normal but paranormal, because you're going to have a chat with Mr. Jim McCarty of the Yardbirds about his brand new book called She Walks in Beauty, which I'm going to subtitle as an alternative view of the universe. Jim, somewhere in deepest, darkest France, how the jolly are you?
I'm good, thank you. A little bit chilly, but the sun is out still, so it's looking good.
Well, we'll just blame the French for that, because on this program they hear me blame the French for something at least once a week.
Yeah, we all do that. Yes.
So this book is prompted by something very unfortunate and unpleasant, but it's going to be a positive that we're going to share with everybody. Back in last year, on June the 7th, your wife Lizzie passed away, and I believe you were together 23 years, and she was only 59, so an awful, awful tragedy. But what it's done is it's invited you, and I believe also that she encouraged you to write about the content of this book as a lifelong interest in what happens next.
Exactly, yes. I really was quite determined, because we were incredibly close. She was my second wife, and we were, much closer than the first wife. We were very, very tight together, and we spoke a lot about how we were going to communicate after she passed, and there was no answer, I said, well, I have no idea how we can do that, but I was determined to find a way of doing it and find out what had happened to her. And after she passed, there were a couple of people that dreamt about her, and they saw her in dreams. And there was also a woman that ran a cafe quite near here that we used to go to up in the hills. And she said, oh, well, a couple of weeks ago, I saw you and Lizzie walking. Lizzie was very happy. She looked great, and you were crying. And then I got back into work, and they told me she'd died. So I thought that was a very strange story. So I thought, well, she must be around somewhere if people see her. So I made a really determined effort to look at YouTube documentaries on near-death experiences, and also contacted various mediums to find out more about it. And I made a nice contact with Suzanne Giesman, who's an American medium, very, very good. And she was running like a Zoom course. It was locked down, and she was doing a course that I could follow. It was like an 8-week course on how to do it, how to contact your loved ones across the veil, she called it. And Suzanne was interesting because she was an officer in the U.S. Navy at one point, and she lost her stepdaughter in Iraq, who was struck by lightning. And so she decided to become a medium from that time. She studied in England, somewhere around Guildford Way, and then she, went back to America, became a sort of well-known medium, and runs courses. So I followed the courses, and she showed me, ways of doing it, and then I found that I was quite successful at doing it, because Suzanne always talked about needing evidence. So you need evidence from your loved ones. They've got to tell you something, something that you don't know about somebody else, or something that's going to happen to you, or something you're going to see. And a lot of those things have happened. So I feel quite convinced that I have made contact. And it's got better and better. I seem to make the regular contact now without having to go too complicated about it. I mean, it's difficult because I never see my wife, but I can pick up things, visually. So for instance, she told me something about somebody called Mariah, who I called up in America. She was working for the band, and I was going to talk about a tour. And so I said to Lizzie, well, tell me something about Mariah that I don't know. so she sort of came up with this skipping rope. I visualized a skipping rope in my mind. So I rang up Mariah and we went on the conversation, and then we got to the end, and I said, well, Mariah, do you ever do skipping at all? Do you like skipping? And she said, well, not really. I used to when I was younger, but I don't do it now. So I explained, well, I've just been communicating with Lizzie, and she said that skipping rope was something that applied to you somewhere along the line. And so she said, well, hold on a minute. And she said, I'm a big fan of Salvador Dali. And Salvador used to put Alice in Wonderland in his paintings, and she was skipping. And in fact, I did a homage to Dali myself. I made like a painting or a picture, and it's hanging on the wall behind me. And she said there's a woman skipping in the middle of it. And she sent me the picture, and I put that in the book. So I thought that was amazing evidence. I mean, that was a great evidential story. And then other things that happened. For instance, I was talking to Lizzie again, and she said, oh, there's a message for you when you go and see the football match on the TV. Because I was planning on watching a football match. So I thought, a message for me on the football match? What would that be? So I came upstairs, I put the TV on, and it was Liverpool were playing, and they were just sort of warming up, and the crowd was singing. And of course, they sing, oh, You'll Never Walk Alone. The Liverpool fans sing that song. And I thought, oh, that's her message, You'll never walk alone. I thought that was lovely. And so it's been very very positive and sort of sometimes quite amusing things have happened to me.
I think that's the important part, is that it amuses you and engages you versus depresses you, and I get that. I absolutely can see how that can be used as a positive. I don't want to say this is an advantage, but the fact that, her passing was not instant, you had time to discuss it, and I think that's also very important, where, she said to you, look out for signs, what kind of thing, where you kind of almost had a plan so that if it happened, and quite rightly you use the word evidence, because this is what people are going to need. And as you've probably noticed with all the bull crap that's passed backwards and forwards instantly overnight around the world of bad, of misinformation, you need the evidence to anchor down what's real. And I think that because you had the time, whilst, I've lost 6 people to cancer in the last 3 years around me, musicians, friends, family, from 43 to 70. You would probably remember Gordon Haskell, a friend of mine, was a terrific jazz singer, and too many people. Too many people, and so I'm conscious of the fact that whilst it gives you time, you don't want it to be unpleasant, but it enabled you, is what it did. And I'm trying to say to myself, thinking about the afterlife, if you choose to, and that's where I think this is going to intrigue our listeners, to read the book as to how this was always around in all the musical events that you talk about, and that's how we connect back to the first book. But in the backdrop were all these other things that you questioned. And the life after, I often wonder, in reading what you wrote, did it escalate in order to understand where her spirit went in order to be with her and maximize those things? There's no music in this book, and there aren't any musicians, but there are stories of your musical growing up and how they all interacted. And that's why I think it's kind of cool that whilst it is book 2, it's not a continuation of book 1, other than the fact it's about your life in music, but it's from this different viewpoint. And for those of you that are curious as to why we're talking about a subject like this, I can just say to you, without giving away too much, if you were to read this, and I have already told Jim that I've got one foot in each camp. Yes, I have my own, say, spiritual beliefs, but I really don't think about it. I truly believe there is something beyond when our bodies disappear, but I don't really think more than that. And you talk about there being two groups. I think that this way of conversing with people in music will engage them enough with intrigue to consider the possibilities and just maybe what I call set up their receptors to be more engaged and make the most of it. Do you think that's a fair comment?
Yes, I think that is. I think a big point in all this is that, well, actually, it's described by somebody called Eben Alexander, who was a brain surgeon, and he had his own near-death experience, and he was actually, he was so ill, I've forgotten what he had. He had some sort of brain disease or something, and his brain was dead. Actually, you know, his brain was certified dead, and he had about maybe 5% chance of living. I mean, he did come back, but he describes this incredible experience he had. You know, where he goes over to the other side, he sees it all. He sees what's happened. He meets people that he knew. He meets relatives, and he says, "Well, how could I do that when the brain was dead?" So obviously, the consciousness carries on. That seems to be the pivotal thing here. That, you know, we can die, our bodies die, but our consciousness carries on somewhere or other.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It sounds like it's quite a nice place to be as well. It's not a sort of horrible judgmental place where you know you get judged for what you've done and all that. There's to be full of love and compassion and joy. So it's not anything to be horrified about.
This Sunday, take a cruise down Route 66. Route 66 celebrates a special time when jazz, R&B, and blues were all on the same page and often in the same song. The focus is on the music of the jump blues and early rock and roll eras of the 40s to mid-50s and how those styles have evolved over the years. It's truly great American music that scared some folks half to death.
That two-beat pattern is the music brought to the United States of America by the communist conspiracy to corrupt teenagers.
Well, whatever. Please join us Sunday morning from 7 to 9 for Route 66 on WRFG 89.3 FM. Your independent community radio station is streaming worldwide over our free mobile app and WRFG.org.
So many questions and so many doubts. Life has a way of working it out. Logic and reason don't play any part. All of the answers lie deep in the heart.
Well, I'm glad that you presented it, that there's no judgment, because God knows the 70s and the early 80s, I'm glad we didn't have YouTube and mobile phones for all the tricks I got up to. So hopefully the people managing the next life there's no evidence. This is the opposite. This is where we don't want any evidence of what I was getting up to. So that way I won't be judged, and that's important. One of the things that I will tell listeners, the first book, Nobody Told Me, is about music, musicians, and all the obvious I think this is more intriguing and as interesting to read about, because you talk about growing up and life in same places I grew up in, and how all the musical things connected, from an instrument to a person, to how you bonded with Keith for the same reasons, and all that stuff. And like I said, I have one foot in each spot, but it seems like from a child, that level of curiosity meant that you had to know stuff. My wife teaches environmental science at a high school to a very high degree. If you just breathe the word Chernobyl, she'll tell you how to build a nuclear reactor. So she can do that. My dad, if you asked him the time, he'd tell you how to build a watch. So for me, I don't go that far. I know enough to be dangerous, and I'll talk about things, but it's almost like I'm now willing to explore. And those of you who are also interested in exploring what if, from people that hopefully you don't believe are, totally balmy, but don't ask my wife, you would perhaps be very, very curious as to, what Jim has to say in this book from absolute pure experience, and the evidence to back it up could be very fascinating. Do you think that all your reading and looking through your life before and during, Lizzie, enabled you, the reception in your mind and spirituality was increased, or do you think it was always there? Do you have to be born with it, or can it be channeled by a deep love?
Well, I think it's a combination of those things. I don't, the thing is, I don't know all the answers, but I've always been interested, and I've always been open, and I've always been very, like you say, very curious about what happens, and what happens here, and where did this story come from, and I always have thought there was so much happening that we don't know anything about. That we know nothing. We just know a tiny bit of what's going on. There's an incredible connection thing going on, like a synchronization that we don't notice. We only see those things when we're open to it, and we notice these little things going on. For instance, I was boiling an egg one morning, and it was like 2 minutes to 9, and I was doing like a 3-minute egg, and I was looking at the cooker clock, and it got to 9 o'clock, and it suddenly went to 2100, the clock. And that's never happened before. And I'm sure that was my wife, because they can influence electricity quite easily. She can flash lights and turn TV off and things like that. It's very interesting. And also, she can appear as a bird or a butterfly. She can merge her energy with a bird or a butterfly. And birds are actually, they're in the world apparently just to play. They're just flying around having a good time. They're not sort of trying to get anywhere. They're just there for the freedom of it. And it's quite funny, the thought of her taking over a bird, but it seems so obvious after a while. You see all these birds coming in, and they're trying to get in the house, and usually the same sort of birds, usually a magpie or a robin. Very interesting.
It is interesting. I'm just wondering, because I haven't had the same level of experience of I would, if something ever happened to my wife. We are as tight as you describe, and we spend 24/7 together, enjoying life we think we're the only ones. We laugh at everybody else. They have no idea what we're talking about, blah, blah, blah. And it makes us feel very unique as a bond. And then you realize, no, everybody that's truly found their real love is doing that. They're all doing the same thing. And I'm just wondering whether, there needs to be that level of, how should we say, desire to understand that was, a spirituality that because you want to know, and it enhances your interpretation because you want to believe that. And I don't think that sounds like the case. I think it sounds like very distinctly communication, not just the desire to join the dots together, but there's some clear movement because it's not a negative thing. With the people that I've lost, there is also a partner. A recent friend of mine lost his father. Another friend lost their husband, who only 60-odd. And I've tried to tell them, with all the losses that I've had, the number one thing that you have to do in grief and despair, the reason it feels like that is because you had inside you a lot of love and huge emotion and feeling for that person that now has nowhere to go. And you have to find a place to put it. And when you put it in that place, you've removed it from yourself, and you've celebrated them, and you then feel better in your own world and life. And I tell them things like, write a book about that person to somebody that didn't know them, but write enough for me to then know who they were, even if it's just an essay. Tell me in 3 pages, 1,000 words, or write a book about that human so that I could know who they were. And I think that's where stuff has to go. I don't think you have to have had a near-death experience, although I'm sure those that did are far more receptive to what we're talking about. But it's channeled. And you, in this book, and I'll repeat it for those that are just stepping in, and if you're late, don't forget that you have to fax in a letter from my mum, who will sign off on the fact that you're not telling porkies, and we generally did have a flat tire if you're late for the show. But you're recounting life's events now, looking backwards over the Yardbirds, school, instruments, people in the music that you met, hit records, event, all those things are there, or they're all talking about life's events, but you're now pointing out the moments of interception, if you like, musical baptisms, I would describe, that engage everybody in this book called She Walks in Beauty. And we're talking to Jim McCarty in France, who says the weather's crap, and I say that's okay because we blame the French for that, and we're allowed to. But basically, a very interesting second book that's not repeating about music, but talking about how maybe, as we're all aging, the day we're born, we start dying, so you might as well you've had a lot of time to prepare for it. No reason why you shouldn't think about it. And the fact that you could have been a monk, you say, was probably a very interesting thought.
Yes, I had that feeling. Because I had a way of meditating just when I was very young. When I was about 10 years old, I was able to be aware of myself, like sitting there. It was something that I may have learned. When I think about it, maybe I learned it in another life. Maybe I was a monk, and so that's why I had that experience. But yeah, yes, there is that side to me, I must admit.
Hey everybody, this is Peter Karp, and when I die, I want to come back as a dolphin. But if I can't come back as a dolphin, I want to come back as UK Bob, the best blues man I know. Snappy dresser, good looking man, knows his music, and plays it on WRFG Atlanta. Good morning blues. I say good morning blues, good morning blues. Play 'em, Bob. But you will move along in the end, and time will be your best friend, be your best friend. People are running round, seeking a goal. You're into a life out of control. You don't know what's gonna come. Jump out from behind. It comes back to look you in the eye. You may find you don't.
I was very disappointed, Jim, when you said that you did not throw any explosives down the toilet. You've got to live up to your rock and roll name.
Yes, I think I did it one time. We were staying in a hotel in New York with Peter and Gordon. That they were in on the same floor. And I do you remember those cherry bombs you could get?
Oh gosh, yes.
They were like little cherries, and you lit them, and they really went off. Well, I chucked one of them outside their door. It was a huge bang, and every door in the corridor opened apart from mine. It's really funny. I think that was the only sort of slightly hell-raising thing I did.
Well, that's all right. There are plenty of Keith Moons out there to make up for you, but you've got to remember that drummers, particularly seasoned rock and roll drummers, tend to carry a bad boy tag. So I'm glad to know that you were on the choir boy side, and you didn't terribly misbehave. Well, not that you're going to tell us anyway, I'm sure. You wait, I'm going to get phone calls now from people saying, no, don't believe him, he's not the angel he makes out, and all that,
That's right, he's very naughty. I studied with this Buddhist Lama at one time for a while, for a few years. In fact, Lucy did as well. We went on lots of pilgrimages, and he sometimes, I used to mess around, and he used to say to me, you are very naughty. You're
That's
very
funny.
naughty.
So tell me, Jim, what's your? Let's give everybody an idea to encourage them to take a minute and read the fascinating account that you've written, and based upon, I think, sufficient intrigue with everything I have to read and all the things that pass through my busy life. I was intrigued enough to read it. What is the goal of you sharing this? Is it to tell people it's going to be okay? Is it to tell people you don't have to be a guru? You don't have to be connected to all the people that George Harrison played sitar with. You don't have to be this and that. You just have to be a normal human being, and it's actually a good thing, not a scary thing. I mean, I'm trying to interpret what your goal is in writing the book and getting people to read it.
Well, I think you said it. I think all those things are very, very right. I think it's not complicated. It's just my observations of what happened to me, and it's helped me a lot, obviously, with the grief process, to know that she is around, and that I've got evidence. I really do believe that she's there, and maybe that would help other people that lose their close loved ones the same way. Maybe it would help them to know my story.
Well, there's the answer, I think. I think that's sufficient. Your observations, that you're perfectly happy and upbeat and positive and almost humorous about, which is how I would be too after a while. It would take me some time, which it has for you, 1.5 years.
Yes.
I think that's
Yes.
a good place for you to be, and I think you're in a very good position to share that by threading your life as the drummer for the Yardbirds and, all the other things. By the way, I should mention to anybody who's been listening, wondering about the music that you've heard playing in between, all of which, came from Jim and his solo albums, which if you log into the radio station archive anytime after today's program, you'll be able to not only re-listen to the show, but you'll see a playlist which will include the passages played from Jim's solo albums. So I think the idea of it all is to say, go ahead. Don't feel like you need to be supremely blessed or connected. You don't need a tinfoil hat. You just need to be somebody who's open to thinking and reading all the connections you made from the 60s onwards, where it all made sense. We'll encourage other people to not think it's science fiction, but just the fact that there has to be. I've always said it. I can't imagine. You and I are as equally different in the sense that we're so unique in DNA and our thought and our spirit, our soul, if you like, regardless of the fact that my old body's going to, give up one day. All of that thought, love, feeling, the intangibles has to go somewhere. It can't just disappear with the physical, which is why I believe that this is absolutely possible. I've just never stepped over the line of actually trying to determine what that might be, and you have. So you've got the one up on me, and so hopefully people listening will feel inclined, to say to themselves, "It's okay, we can do this."
Yeah, exactly, and it's ongoing as well, Bob. It goes on. It gets bigger and bigger, and it gets more interesting as I look. I mean, I'm still engaged with it. I'm still finding out more. It's still interesting and more interesting.
Well, I appreciate the super different conversation. It's still about life in music, your life, your music, but after life in music, what do we do? And there's plenty of us old rockers out there that may well be thinking about this and don't want to ask someone. So we've opened the kimono, and I really do appreciate your time to tell us about the book, which you should find in all the usual places, called She Walks in Beauty. Make sure you know how to spell Jim's name with 2 C's. It's not McCartney. We don't talk about Macca. As everybody knows, I'm not a fan of Paul. And so that's a great excuse to get their attention. But thanks so much for your time, Jim. Terrific chat.
Yeah, lovely. And you did. I think you really got it. You really understood it, and you did a nice spiel, as they say. Thank you.
Seems like we've come around the corner. We've left the fear behind. Trust is a truth we can rely on. We can have peace of mind, and nothing matters. There's no need to fight. I'm going with the feeling. Everything's alright, and nothing matters. No need to fight. everything's alright. Everything's alright. Everything's alright. Everything's alright. Everything's alright. Everything's alright.
So there you have a one-on-one insights with the author, Jim McCarty, from his home in France. The book is She Walks in Beauty, My Quest for the Bigger Picture. Maybe it answers a lot of questions for a lot of people, or maybe it creates questions. Either way, when you think about it, it's got to be worth a read. Whether or not you were ever a fan of the band or that era of music doesn't matter. If you were, then all the better for it. Meanwhile, we'll rock on with some other music. Oh, by the way, I did forget to mention the interludes that I placed in there were all excerpts from Jim's last solo album. And what did I do? I put in a track called So Many Questions, because I thought, well, that's relevant. Soft in a Hard Place and Come Around the Corner. I just used pieces of it just to connect the dots, and they all had titles that kind of, I don't know, were equally intriguing to insert, but it was his music and his book and his conversation.
Day after day, I'm more confused. You to look for the light in the pouring rain. You know it's a game I hate to lose. Feeling the pain, taking the strain. So give it a beat, boy, and free my soul. I wanna get lost in a rock and roll and drift away. Give it a beat, boy, free my soul. I wanna get lost in a rock and roll and drift away. Beginning to think I'm wasting time. Don't understand the things I do. The world outside's so unkind. Counting on you, carry me through. So get a beat, boy, free my soul. I wanna get lost in a rock and roll and drift away. Get a beat, boy, free my soul. I wanna get lost in a rock and roll and drift away. When my mind is free, when a melody can move me. When I'm feeling blue, the guitar's coming through, will soothe me. Thanks for the joy you're giving me. Want you to know I believe in your songs. Rhythm and rhyme, harmony. Carry me on, keeping me strong. So give it a beat, boy, and free my soul. I wanna get lost in the rock and roll and drift away.
come see what's new at WRFG 89.3 FM at our holiday open house. When? Saturday, December 11th from 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. at the Low 5 Points Community Center, 1083 Austin Avenue, Northeast Atlanta, 30307. Join your favorite air shifters in the cafe on the ground floor of the building for music, international food, and tasty beverages. Take a guided tour of our renovated studios, renovated conference room, and station office. Bid on some select fabulous experiences at restaurants, theaters, vacation stays, and once-in-a-lifetime adventures. Check out our new logo on our WRFG merchandise. Celebrate with their station for progressive information and hand-picked quality music on Saturday, December 11th from 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. Ticket information and more details to be announced soon.
A couple of the extras there from the Rolling Stones, big expanded 4-disc Tattoo You that came out a month ago that I thought were worth having, the old Dobie Gray song, and I guess that was Jimmy Reed, done a little differently. The rest of it, not so fascinating. If you were a Stones collector, you'd probably have everything in there. Anyway, it's time to wrap things up, getting towards the last 10 minutes or so. I'm going to throw in a couple of new, fresh singles, things that don't belong under another category, which to me makes it all the more interesting. I want to start with a lady from New Orleans. Well, she's from Louisiana. I'm not. Maybe it's Lafayette, not New Orleans. Can't remember. Goes by the name of Gemini Dragon, and this is very funky, swampy New Orleans, but terrific vocal. Followed by Old Dominion, an obscure track, and then maybe we'll squeeze in Brian Setzer from his new album right at the very end. But you can always email me for a set list, ukbob@mindspring.com, and the show will be on YouTube later in the day at ukbob007. Next week, nothing but 60s. Ooh-yah.
Trying to make me feel like it was all my fault. And all this fire is what I love to need. I got the blues, cause I don't chastise me. You're a fool, and you're not gonna make me cry. Ain't no coming back, so don't even try. Like a master fire, you will get burned. Like ice to water, the tide is turned. As a little to extend, I won't be stopped. My love is gold, if you like it or not. Yeah, if you like it or not. Yeah. Take this heat, or go on and run. The dust won't save it all. I'm like a rusty gun. This tank is empty, this tank is dry. Don't care nothing, no more you and I. Like a massive fire, you will get burned. Like ice to water. tide is turned. At the little twisted, how we stop. My love is gone. If you like it or not. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. If you like it or not. Yeah. Oh, no, no, no. Like a match of fire, you will get burned. Like ice to water, the tide is turned. That's a little twisted, all this time. My love is gone, if you love it or not. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. If you like it or not.
Look at you, looking at me. I can't help but notice what